Hi, my name is Jill, and I created the following video to teach you a little about an amazing art form which I learned about recently. I did some research and experimented with the basic principles of cyanotype, and would like to share my knowledge with you along with a few tips on ways to create a cyanotype of your own. Cyanotype is a 170-year-old photographic printing process that produces prints in a distinctive dark Prussian blue color. The word cyan comes from the Greek meaning dark blue substance. It's also called Prussian blue for the color of the Prussian military uniforms. Between 1842 and 1843, two people were instrumental in inventing and utilizing the cyanotype process. They were Sir John Herschel and Anna Atkins. The process was actually invented by Sir John Herschel, a brilliant astronomer and scientist. His father was the astronomer Sir William Herschel, who discovered the planet Uranus. Interestingly, Uranus, due to mostly methane gas in its atmosphere, appears visually as cyan blue. You also may have noticed that the blue inkjet color that you buy to replace the ink in your computer is also named cyan. It was Herschel who coined the use of the terms photography, positive, and negative to refer to photographic images. Herschel was founding member of the Royal Astronomical Society. However, Herschel did not use cyanotype for photography, but for reproducing notes. Herschel originally published his findings about the cyanotype process in a paper submitted to the Philosophical Transaction of the Royal Society of England titled "On the Action of the Rays of the Solar Spectrum on Vegetable Colors and Some New Photographic Processes." A year after its invention, the process was used in the earliest known photographically illustrated book entitled Photographs of British Algae, Cyanotype Impressions in 1843 by Anna Atkins, as seen on the right, which used cyanotypes for both the images and the text. Here you can see a few of Anna Atkins' creations from her book. These are from the digital collections at the New York Public Library. In 2018, the New York Public Library held an exhibition of her prints entitled Blueprints, the pioneering photographs of Anna Atkins. She created the images by placing objects directly on photosensitive paper. This process was called a photogram, unless you are a gentleman by the name of Man Ray, in which you called it a rayograph. But interestingly, Anna is regarded as the first female photographer. Compared to other photographic printing processes, cyanotype is easy and inexpensive. No darkroom is needed. Instead, it uses the power of the sun and iron salt solutions rather than the silver salt solution of black and white photography. Ferric ammonium citrate and potassium ferrocyanide are combined, and when exposed to UV light, they create ferric ferrocyanide. The cyanotype process was also used to create copies of technical and architectural plans, and these copies were called blueprints. Even though the cyanotype process is no longer used, any construction document or detailed plan today is still referred to as a blueprint. So let's get started, shall we? Let's begin with a list of what you'll need to create your own beautiful cyanotype photographs. You'll need watercolor paper or another surface, a sponge brush, the chemical coating, sunlight or a purchased UV light, hydrogen peroxide, a sink with running water, a low light room, and of course, your imagination. Before we take brush to paper, so to speak, it's a good idea to first select our subject matter. Perhaps after viewing several cyanotype prints online, there might be one image that catches your eye, and you should try to copy that for your first practice prints. I like geometric figures and leaves, branches, ferns, single flowers, or a mix of several items. It's a good idea to figure out ahead of time how you want to lay out your image, because after the chemical is applied to paper, you should be ready to place your object on top and take it out into the sun. Before you prepare to coat your art paper, practice first by laying the object you want to print on the art paper. In this case, I deconstructed this plant and laid each element of the plant on the paper, making it as flat as possible, understanding that the opaque elements, such as the leaves and stems, would not transmit UV rays to the treated paper and therefore appear white in the end. This is the finished product. I purchased my paper treatment chemicals from Amazon. They're not expensive and were sent to me within a few days of ordering. Those seen here are called Jacquard Cyanotype for photographic blueprints on paper and fabric. They come in 2 separate containers and sell for about $25. They require a sponge brush for application, which means painting the product on a surface such as watercolor or multimedia paper. The chemical products will last in the bottle several months, but once you've mixed the two, they will need to be disposed of within a few hours. You may want to measure your chemicals in separate containers. I use a small scoop, which is about 1/4 cup. Then the combined solution will be a 1/2 cup. The chemicals are mixed together in equal parts. Your floors, carpets, work surfaces, clothes, and skin can be stained by the chemicals, although they're non-toxic. Cover all possible areas, and it's a good idea to use rubber gloves and an apron or an old shirt to work in. If you have the space, choose an area where you can spread out. Using a sponge or a paintbrush, simply paint the chemical combination onto the paper. Paper, card, textiles, or any other natural material can be used to print on. I've even seen cyanotypes on eggshells. Make sure your working area is dimly lit or lit with a low-level tungsten bulb. Once the material is coated, leave it there to dry, or you can speed up the process using a hairdryer. Having said this, some artists prefer to make wet cyanotypes, in which they lay the object on the chemically treated paper before it dries. The art paper that I use, which requires the chemical being painted on it, was purchased at Michael's, and it's about 9 by 12 in size. You can, of course, cut the paper to a smaller size if you wish. This is a medium grain, mixed media quality, and adequate for cyanotype. At this point, I'll mention an easier way to create cyanotype, and that is to purchase pre-treated paper. You can purchase 32 sheets of pre-treated paper called sun paper for about $13. Or, as seen here, you can purchase pre-treated fabric sheets that come 10 to a pack and sell for about $20. The only limitation to purchasing pre-treated paper or fabric is the size limitation. Using a larger sheet of art paper, which will result in a larger print, which allows for more interesting images, I think. You would also then have the opportunity to apply the chemical to certain parts of that art paper, and you'd be left with a lovely image surrounded by the natural color of the paper, which had not been coated. Your object or negative is then placed on top of this chemically treated paper and secured under glass, then brought outside into the sun to cure, essentially under a full sun for a few minutes, up to several hours depending on which process you prefer. You can still create a cyanotype under clouds, but it takes several minutes to hours longer. If the natural sun is not an option due to cloudy or rainy weather, you may use a purchased UV light to process your work. In other words, a UV light will replace the natural sun. I purchased an Everbeam UV light with a wavelength of 365 nanometers and LED high-performance bulbs. The cost was about $50, and I purchased it on Amazon. One note here is to make sure that the wavelength is 365 nanometers. A longer wavelength, such as 395, will probably not work well. This slide shows how I attached it to my light box by hanging it from the top. It can also be attached to a large cardboard box. Here's a close-up view of what the UV light looks like when turned on. After the print has been exposed adequately, you'll be ready to process your print by rinsing it in cold water. The wash also removes any unexposed chemicals. Wash it for at least 5 minutes and do a few rinsings until all the chemicals are removed and the water runs clear. Hydrogen peroxide will enhance the vibrant blue color. Use approximately 2 tablespoons of it in the rinse water and see how it affects the depth of color. Finally, hang your print to dry by clipping it to a hanger or other platform for several hours. Now it's your turn to experiment with cyanotype. This slide illustrates a few ideas for images. As you can see, the sky's the limit. One additional way to create a cyanotype, if you are familiar with Photoshop, is to create a negative of an image on a transparent film. You can purchase the film at any art store and print the negative from your home computer in black and white. This means you can use virtually any of your own photographs and turn them into negative, which allows for much more flexibility and creativity. And one more note, you can essentially color an image by using more sophisticated techniques, such as bleaching and recoloring the image negative, but that process is more complicated and not within the scope of this tutorial. Here are a few examples, however, of how gorgeous a print may be possible through the process. The creator of these images is artist Joe Stephen. Joe uses a variety of natural surfaces, such as old photographic paper. She states her wet cyanotype process is simple and addictive by introducing various kitchen chemicals to the treated paper. This might include vinegar, lemon juice, washing soda, salt, spices, and natural dyes such as turmeric, paprika, coffee grounds, and plant material, resulting in a variety of textures, colors, and tones. This slide illustrates the artist's technique from beginning to end. Her secret for an interesting background in this image is the use of bubbles, which she applies directly to the treated paper and the peacock feather. You can see that readily in the upper right image. Then she puts glass over the image and allows it to expose in the sun. When the image is washed in order to remove the chemicals, the colors pop out and continue to change in variation. So now it's your turn. One of the comments I read often from artists is they never quite know what the outcome of their cyanotypes will look like. That is rather exciting when you think about it, and a reason to experiment in a variety of ways to create this gorgeous art form. Thank you.